Hello, everyone. I'm Jean Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this edition of Nostrdamus and the Vortex of Time. With me today are the esteemed guest, Mr. Jay Weidner. You can find him at jweidner.com and also here on YouTube at Reality Check. Jay, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year. How are you?
Hey, great. Glad to be back.
Happy to have you. And yes, please also welcome my lovely co host, Julie from MaisonJupiter.com here on the web. You can also find her on the Academy and on her YouTube channel where she's producing even more unique content. So go check it out. Julie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Very good. Hi, Jay. Hi, JC. And hi, everybody watching. Very excited about today's show.
Well, I'm excited to have all of you on here. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today on this live interactive show. I'll try to bring up your comments as we go along during the show. And perhaps if we have time, I know I always say that, but we run out of time. There's so much material to go through when Jay and Julie are on the screen. I might take questions later on. Julie, let's set the stage here for the conversation here today. It was interesting that we just did this amazing astrology from the off-world perspective with Gosha of Cosmic Agency a couple of days ago. Guys, if you haven't seen this episode, really go check it out. Really fun. And we had a big conversation about Pluto and why it was demoted. So we're going to touch upon some of those themes here today. But Julie, really in earnest, the three quatrains that we're going to be focusing on today spells perhaps the disaster here for the American Empire. Set that up, generally speaking, in terms of overview here for the episode, and then we'll get into our quatrains.
Yes. So I did a lot of research trying to find something that would go along the lines of Pluto changing sign and entering the sign of Aquarius as of March of this year. So whenever Pluto leaves a sign and enters a new one, we have some kind of societal crisis happening, a very big change in our democracy, in the way control is being dispatched over the governments, the different countries. So I found three quatrains, which I can't wait to share them with you because I think you're going to be very amazed by them. And they were all talking about the United States and this kind of, let's say, power change. And also, they're talking about some mysterious leader that was born on an eclipse. So I can't wait to share that with you. That'd be the second one. And first one, he's talking about the White House being uninhabited. So we're going to talk about this change in power, especially in the United States, but also a change in our democracy.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot going on. And guys, let me just share the screen here. Since we had the show last, and Jay was kind of forecasting this in the last couple of episodes, we were heading into this big turning, or as Cliff High was talking about, the big ugly, where everything was going to be revealed. What was interesting here, there was some big ugliness on the screen. You guys can go check that out. But it's the falling away of all of these false gurus, I think, and making way here for the age of Aquarius. We're seeing that now play out in reality. You guys can go check out those depositions. We also have big YouTubers, big stars from Hollywood now coming up and realizing and doing the mea culpa, and I'll watch my words here for the YouTube channel, but realizing that perhaps they made the wrong decisions and the people who were hesitant are actually in the stronger position, or as Scott Adams said here, they are winning the unwilling. So this is a big turning, and we also saw Timothy Robbins on Russell Brand show, also kind of similar interview here. We saw now there's misdirected anger also. We're seeing more of this now where people who were willing to take the products are suddenly very angry at the unwilling for not warning them enough. I kid you not, this is in the realm right now. So we're seeing a lot of evidence right now that things are crumbling and probably faster and faster. And of course, this narrative that continues that, of course, there's a specific season for heart attacks. Didn't you know? This is perfectly normal. So, Jay, looking at all of that in its perspective right now, given also the context, before we get into the Nostradamus stuff, Pluto coming into our field of view here and how it relates to the destruction of our old systems. How do you want to set up the interview here for today in terms of that context?
Well, I think that the last 6 weeks has been astonishing. I'm flabbergasted, to be honest with you. And I know Elon put out that tweet, 3 or 4 days ago, got 50 million responses. My mom got it. She died. My sister died. And it was like, after about 100,000 responses, I couldn't handle it any longer. And there was none positive. It was all negative.
Yeah.
And that story, of course, is being squashed. But now we have the new story coming out, what we call, what is it? Controlled evolution.
Yes, by Project Veritas last night.
The whole point of the entire thing is to control the future of evolution, which should scare the living daylights out of every single human being on Earth. And I will point out something. In several religious texts, and I'm not going to say what religion or anything, but in several religious texts going back thousands of years, there is a group of people who believes their job is to create a new human, that believes that their job is to correct the mistakes that humans are and to make us more perfect. And of course, that's the plot to the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey too, is the aliens are trying to perfect humanity. And so this is a long alchemical tradition of the perfection of humanity. However, the way they're doing it is completely and utterly insane. So,
anyway,
the revelations have been amazing. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't. I can't believe everybody is suddenly now realizing it. It's like this mass awakening in the consciousness, and they're pissed off. So, I mean, I have family that are pissed off at me,
right?
Because I wasn't, vociferous enough about my denial, right? I should have been yelling, I guess, and screaming at them. But I thought, they wrote me and said, "Oh, I'm going to get it today," and I was like, "Oh well, I'm sorry." I just say things like that, but I didn't know what else to say. So,
what's the term in English? Self-emulsifying? Is that the right term? Where you put yourself on fire?
Yeah.
Is that the right term?
Self-immolation.
Okay. Had you done that, Jay, it still would not be enough. So that's the whole point here. And it's actually mind-boggling to think that there would be any blame directed at the unwilling who were shouting at rooftops. But anyways, just for the
and we aren't winners, by the way. Scott Adams, or as I call him, Clot Adams.
Yeah.
He says that we're the winners. We're not winners. Nobody won in this.
No,
we're all losers. In this.
Yeah.
So I don't feel victorious at all.
No. And like Cliff High had said, this is perhaps the first world war in history where humans are eventually going to win the fight, but only after realize all the casualties of war. And I think that Scott hasn't really realized the whole plot yet. He understands a little bit from one point of view why perhaps the unwilling are perhaps ahead of the game here, but he hasn't gone that far into his thinking to see what the whole plot was yet. So hopefully there's more people who will educate him going down the road.
Watching him over the last few months, he was at one point threatening to sue everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was Corey, who all over again. I was like, what? You're going to sue people because they're criticizing you? Really?
Yeah.
But that's why he finally had to back off of the whole thing, because he was actually looking a little bit like a lunatic there.
Yeah. You mentioned anger. Oh, let me just bring this up for the audience members. This is the Project Veritas clip that Jay's talking about now, some undercover director here at Pfizer explaining the controlled evolution clip. So go check that out. Scary nonetheless to watch, of course. And what came out also, you said about anger. Now, a couple of weeks ago in the Web of Data, it was predicted that we would see anger play out in terms of revenge. And we saw these videos now already in Australia where people are, and I'm not advocating any revenge. Trudeau too, yes, can't walk the street. And also some doctors here facing a lot of anger from people who perhaps were maimed or disabled by some of these products. I guess that's the best we can say here. But yes, the anger here, even with Trudeau, he can't walk the streets right now. It's absolutely scary to see. And of course, we saw also the Walks of Shame at Davos, produced by the Rebel News here in Canada. They did an amazing job. So I agree with you. It's astounding what's already come out in the last couple of weeks. And judging by the astrology and some of the webpod data, apparently February and March is going to get worse. So we're not done yet with this big ugly. We're just really now opening this whole can of worms. Julie, let's get into, I guess, the first quatrain. Hopefully this will put the conversation into perspective here for the audience members. We're looking at 741 by Nostradamus. Go ahead.
Yes. So he says in that quatrain, the bones of the feet and the hands locked up. So pretty much, and also I made some kind of correlation with the decode with Dolores Cannon's book. So this line, in my opinion, in Dolores Cannon's opinion, also talks about the democracy being on hold because you're kind of locked up basically. So you cannot do anything, you cannot move, you're stuck there. And then because of the noise, the house is uninhabited for a long time. So the noise is referring here to social unrest. And by the house, he's allegedly talking about the White House. So the White House being empty. And that's also in the decode from Dolores Cannon. And he further says that there's no officially elected president. So that's why the White House would be empty. And then third line, he says, digging in dreams, they will be unhurted. So, and by that, he said in the decode that he meant going back to the dreams of the founding fathers. So that's why he meant the dreams. And we all know the American dream. So that dream is about patriotism, and freedom. So going back to the core values of what should be the United States. So digging those values back up. And the last line, the house healthy and inhabited without noise. So going back to the core values of the United States would assure us to have finding a peaceful solution that's going to be accepted by the majority.
Okay. Before you give the kicker here, Julie, let me ask you, Jay, your first impressions on this quatrain. How does that relate to what we're seeing today?
Well, it's funny because I have in my bookmarks, I have the White House camera that sits across the street from the White House in Lafayette Park. And, it's 24/7 and the curtains are always shut. There's a guard out front on the front porch always. And there's sometimes a guard up on the roof with a gun. And there it is. And there's never any traffic. Nobody's ever walking around. There's no cars in the parking lot. And then I can point out that when Uncle Joe is in the Oval Office, that's a set. And they admit it. They admit that that's a set across the street in another building. And it's built to, I believe, 2/3 or something of the set of the original. So everything is 2/3 shorter and smaller. And, I guess to save money, I have no idea why you do any of it. Why wouldn't they just shoot it in the Oval Office? And of course, I've been told that remember, I'm going to forget her name. Her Freedom, the woman that was selling the putting out documents, secret documents. Freedom. Her name was Freedom, some weird name.
Oh, they caught her because of the printer ink.
Yeah, they had a mark on every single page that told the printer where it was printed, the date, everything, and nobody could see it. It was all invisible. And I was told that all of the votes in the 2020 were that way. They were all marked, and the NSA could watch everything from satellites and see where everything was being moved and back and forth. And they notified a certain section within the Pentagon, and that they're letting the crime work its way out because you cannot arrest anybody until they've committed the crime. So I'm being told that they're letting this crime unfold in real time for a future comeuppance.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I saw an interview just after that last election you're talking about now. I think Dr. Steve Pieczenik was on, and he was talking about these non-radioactive isotopes that would have this kind of screen printing on the
Yep.
ballots. We don't see that yet, but I guess the situation would be that it's still unfolding. So eventually that might come to bear. I wanted to bring this up also, Julie, here in context of that first quatrain, the quiet house here. This is a remote viewing by the folks at Crypto Viewing, Dick Algary and Company. This was done a year or two ago, and it was the target for this, the tasking was the death of the dollar. And here they had emergency meetings, shock, disbelief, ruin, catastrophe. How can we face this? These were a bunch of bending over, puking congressmen in the hallway. And on the right there, it says sense of adjourning for the last time, transfer of power, as if the building was going to be emptied here somewhere, at least in terms of its power. Have you seen this slide here before, Jay? Did I talk to you about this?
I have. Yeah, I remember when it came out.
And what do you make of that now when you look at the White House pictures we just talked about and perhaps what's actually unfolding? Do you see that perhaps that's already occurred, or is that still an event that's coming forward here, perhaps with a big shock event with the actual death of the dollar and maybe a derivatives bomb, as perhaps Cliff High is seeing in his data? What do you think?
I think that we are in a world of hurt, and it's going to get worse. And they're going to try and impose the digital dollar on us, and that will be the end. So the one thing that we can't let happen is that there has to be a line in the sand somewhere, and that's the line in the sand. I'm not letting any AI look into what I buy and analyze what I do. I'm not going to allow it. And, we're probably going to have to go back to cash, but either way, we can't let this happen. And that's the end game right now. And, crash it until they can get this in is what the plan is. And we can't let that happen. That's just got to be the point where we say, no, we're not doing that one anymore.
And I think as we'll see here with the astrology and the alignments coming in, Pluto is very much of that energy. It's about, how about no? It's coming very soon. Julie, before I put the next slide up here, how do you want to set this up here? Why is this next slide very important to this particular quadrant?
I just wanted to add to that, well, let's say the White House is already empty. There could be also some kind of discrepancy between Washington, D.C. and also like the corporation of the United States and also the real United States as being, how do we call that? Not the corporation, the other one.
The constitutionally constitutionally governed 50 states of the United States.
Exactly.
As opposed to the federal government, which has nothing to do with the states.
Exactly. Thank you, Jay. So I thought about those two being two separate things, and I think most people are not aware of that. So that might be why they cannot really officially be in the White House, or maybe there's something along those lines.
Well, if he isn't officially president, if he's some kind of interim while a crime is being investigated, then he can't use the White House.
Right.
So that would explain that.
And that could explain why they never gave him the nuclear football, remember? And the military is still holding on to that, suggesting that perhaps somebody else is commander-in-chief while somebody is sitting in the pretendency. So, yeah. Julie, let's go back to this.
Good point. So let's switch to the decode. So this is from the book Conversations with Nostrdamus by Dolores Cannon. And I saw a comment earlier. Sometimes I'm switching from she to he because Dolores Cannon acts like a channel in this book, through someone else. So when I say he, I'm talking about Nostradamus and not Dolores Cannon. So, and then the he here refers to Nostradamus, just so you know. So he says the house refers to the White House. In secret, the presidents of the supposedly free country have been steadily abusing the power to a greater and greater extent. And something needs to happen to shake them up and shake up the people so they wouldn't be so complacent. There will be a time in another period of great social unrest, even more major than during the Vietnam War era. He first shows the concept of a hung jury, so that a sentence cannot be decided upon in court. But he's applying that concept to an election. A hung election finally divided between two different men for president. And that was a while ago, just so you know. I think it's in the 80s that this book was written.
Wow.
The Electoral College will not be able to make the decision either, because the vote will be so even, so finely divided throughout the entire nation, that it will temporarily freeze the process of democracy. The hands and feet, the very core of the operation that is the election, will be locked up, frozen.
When did she write that?
I believe it was 1981, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
So,
pretty good description of where we're headed here in 2024. So right now, if the 45th president ran, like he's saying he's going to again, he can't win. Okay, he can't win. He can't win. And somebody needs to tell him that he can't win. I'm not saying anybody else can win either, but I've been told that the votes are so close that it's going to be almost impossible to declare a winner, not just in the presidency, but a lot of other races. Everything's so close. I mean, here in Colorado, I think 4 or 5 races were just razor thin victories, and that was in a lot of ways. And we truly are divided. We really, truly are. I mean, it's not a myth. We really are divided on how we're going to go forward here, and right now our side seems to be winning because of the truth is getting out. And you know, I like to say conspiracy theorists 37, mainstream media 0. Right? We've won the last 37 games, and we're probably going to win the next 37. So I would say that 2024 is going to be so razor thin that it could erupt into something much worse.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes if we're not perhaps already there, this stalemate or this lockup, could that have happened 2 years ago?
We are.
But yet we don't know this. The people on the screen and people watching us know this. But for the mainstream audience, they think that there's a government in place and that everything's going according to plan, even though the guy in the White House is not in the White House. Perhaps we're already in this frozen portion of time. Right.
Look at the supply chains. Like first they were all completely locked up. Now there's no boats in Long Beach. They're all gone. Because why? Because nobody's buying anything.
Yeah.
The whole place is just completely locked up. My people are telling me, you know, if you're going to buy something, buy it now. Don't wait. Yeah. Buy it now. I mean, a lot of things like stocks, and whatever you're going to do it and get it over with in the next 30 days. And then batten down the hatches and cover your ears, because it's going to get really crazy. And the more that I call it the Great Distortion. We're in what I call the Great Distortion, where the powers that be have had to distort reality. Remember, William Casey will know we've succeeded when everything that everybody believes is a lie. Yeah. But why would anyone want that, right? Why would the head of the CIA want that to occur? Why would he say that, right? Because as long as we're in the Great Distortion, as long as reality is being distorted, we don't sit back and ask the one question, who is giving orders here? That's why reality is being distorted, because they don't want you to step back and say, wait a minute. They don't want you to step back and see patterns either, of a way that people are moving through. It's like this guy at Veritas said today, you know, they come from the farmy companies and they go back to the farmy companies. They go back
rotating door
to the farmy companies and then back to the Pentagon again. I mean, he said it, and right there and then. And then he had the gall to say, and don't tell anybody, you know. It's like,
Yeah, it's good for us, but it's not too good for the Americans, he said. It's like, wow.
yeah. And so in a way, what's that line? Truth is like a lion, right? So we just have to sit back at this stage. I don't think we should recriminate anybody or do it. I think we just need to sit back and just let it fall apart, because the normies are waking up and they don't like it and they're not very happy. And just look at the 50 million tweets that Elon got. They are not happy. And that anger is going to get harder and bigger as more and more people clunk off and their friends are left behind and have to take care of the mess. And it's bad, man. It's bad. I mean,
you're right, and I think the idea of letting truth do its thing here as the lion, we don't need to do much anymore. And I think especially not do the I told you so, because it's going to engage even more of this anger and vitriol, and that's misdirected anger. And the right question is that you just said it, and somebody repurposed this: who is giving the orders? And I think that's the question for the audience members here. But the people, we can all agree on this here, and we'll get to the decode here, but the people giving the orders are really afraid of this energy. Pluto in Aquarius. Explain that, Julie, why they're so afraid of it and why they demoted Pluto.
Yeah, good one. I was just about to switch to this theme. So and even funnier is that Pluto, they tried to demote it as a dwarf planet in astronomy, so we wouldn't give it as much meaning and importance. But the astrologers never demoted Pluto, because we know it's such a powerful and important archetype in astrology and in human consciousness that it was already part of it. And I remember I was writing an astrology article for a magazine at one point, and the magazine editor wrote me, and she's like, well, why do you guys consider Pluto as to be an important archetype? So I had to write like this whole explanation, because they're so like, they're so left brain. So I had to explain everything. But this is such an important archetype. And when we did the show with Gosha, from Cosmic Agency, she mentioned that her ET contact was saying that they were afraid, that Cabal was actually afraid of this archetype. So that's why they tried to push it away, because it stands for rebellion, revolution, and transformation, which is not a concept that they like, because they want everything to stay the same, where there's this distortion that you were talking about, Jay. So we cannot see the reality of our situation and ask the right questions. And Pluto also stands for hidden power, very interestingly enough. So once Pluto shifts to Aquarius, which is the sign of the people in general in astrology and mundane astrology, this is going to be for 21 years, so until 2044. So that's why also it's such an important transit for humanity, because it's not just like a year or something. It's a very important period of time. And Pluto stands for generations in human years also. So a new generation of people will be born also with the Pluto in Aquarius. So some themes that I wrote there. So rebirth of the true sense of freedom, because Aquarius deals with freedom, with sovereignty, personal sovereignty, but also as a collective, being sovereign on with like-minded people and being able to build communities. So also we can see some self-organizing collective during that era. Revolutions and big societal rebellions. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius, we had the French Revolution. So a lot of people will be angry and wanting change. So let's hope it's going to be a lot more peaceful. But
guillotines, anyone? Guillotines?
But let's hope there's some change nonetheless. So I wrote a lot more. You can read them, a lot more themes. So revealing the corruption in ET groups and agendas, preparing the ground for true ET disclosure, revealing the transhumanism agenda. Sorry, I skipped the line there. Technology patents coming out, because Aquarius stands for new technology also. and everything that is scientific. So revealing first, when Pluto enters a sign, it reveals the corruption, and then it leaves some place for us to make different decisions and to get our power back for those Aquarian archetypes. So same for big tech, that's ruled by Aquarius as well. And I think we will be seeing a lot of let's say a lot more aware and awake people. So a really big jump in consciousness could happen there.
What do you make, Jay, about this? Hold on, I'm getting a call at the same time. What do you make about this idea that maybe new humans are born under this particular generation here of that Plutonian energy? What does that bring to the keg, the powder keg that we're in now? And also talk about how people being more interested in astrology, perhaps also astronomy, as Graham Hancock is suggesting in his Netflix documentary, that our ancient peoples were way more interested about this than us, and we have to go back and look at the stars. Put that into context, Jay.
Well, they are more interested in astrology, I can tell you that. A lot of our leaders have been Aquarians. It's a very leader-like sign. People follow Aquarians naturally. I've worked for 3 corporations in which the presidents were all Aquarians. And so that generation that's going to be born in those 21 years, they're going to be the leaders. And they're coming into a world that has been smashed and broken apart, in which there's no authority. Who believes anyone anymore? No one. The ones who didn't believe authority are, according to Claude Adams, the winners, you know, and so they're going to see that the idiots who were the idiots of the adults and who weren't. And it's going to be painfully obvious to them, especially in about 10 years. So that's pretty revolutionary, I would say. They're going to have a way different point of view of how this world works than we ever did in our own naivete. So, you know, I was watching somebody, a scientist, and he was talking about how he watched all this unfold over the last 3 years, and that he knew at every turn that they were making mistakes and the advice was wrong and, you know, all that. And at the very end, he said something really interesting. He said, you know, 3 years ago, I was an atheist. I was a scientist. But after watching what happened over the last 3 years, you know, I've become very religious and very spiritual. And even caught myself praying a couple times. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? You know, and then I heard from a person who knows a lot about China, that China's biggest problem right now, besides overpopulation and all the rest, is that everybody's secretly converting to Christianity. And that it's a real serious problem because the Christians are immediately rejecting the authority. And I have no idea what's fueling that, except probably a very horrible living circumstances in which you have no place to turn, you know, but to religion. But, you know, these are very interesting circumstances that people are turning towards spirituality now and rejecting the mechanical materialist world view that was so prevalent for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah,
for sure. I see it around me as well with my friends and people that have not really awakened yet, but I see them being very drawn naturally to esoteric in general and spirituality.
Yep.
Well, it only takes one light in the room. And Julie, when you're walking around your friends now, they see a different version of humanity and they might not necessarily understand it, but they're gravitating towards it. And I think that's what you're seeing. I see that in my life. I'm sure Jay also, you've seen that in your life. Fascinating. Okay. Wow. We're already.
I was surprised I still had friends after the past 3 years. So yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of them are coming back, Jay, for the first year or two here, while the, how did you call him? Claude Adams had the reins here in social media, the rest of us were shunned from the social parties, from the dinners, from the Christmas parties, and all that. But now those people are starting to come back slowly, and we need to make room for them and be compassionate too, because we could have been those guys. We could have been, it depends on your circumstance, where you are, what your work is, what media you watch, and all that. And so there's still room for us to be compassionate there.
Something else, though.
Yeah.
I got kind of pissed off the other day, and I got on my Facebook page and just started like blurting out the truth, like over about 10 posts about how they're killing us all. And and I didn't care. I said, Facebook, censor me, kick me off. I don't care anymore, and they let it all ride. They let it all go. And I was stunned, so I kept amping it and escalating it, waiting to get kicked off, and they didn't do it. And so I think they themselves know that something has changed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're starting to feel it. Okay. We're 35 minutes in. Oh my God, Julie, we have so much to go through. Let me bring in the next quatrain. I believe it was 552. Let me bring it up.
Yeah.
And I just showed Jay's Facebook. So if you want to go see his rantings, go check him out on Facebook there. And hopefully he'll still be there tomorrow without the censorship machine here. And good news, guys, if you were still looking for Cliff High on Twitter, he just got his Twitter back 2 days ago. And he put out a post saying the world has changed forever. Great. They let Cliff back on Twitter, so go check him out. Okay, Julie, 552, Nostradamus. What do we got?
So this is one quatrain that wasn't decoded from by Dolores Cannon. So this is one I found in another book. No decode was made, but it kind of flashed at me like you need to talk about this one. So first line, a king will be who will give opposition. So some form of leader in opposition to the one world government is the way I see it. Second line, the exiles elevated over the realm. So isn't that funny? So those who were casted out of society before, being the new leaders, elevated over the realm. Third line.
It sounds a lot like the refuseniks are now in the position of power, but keep going.
Yeah. And then third line, very interestingly enough, to swim in blood, the poor, pure people. Whoa. So when we were saying earlier that there's no winners because everybody is affected by this situation, and we have a lot of people around us, all of us, who suffered from this situation also. So it's kind of rebuilding our world in a complete new way to me, and also dealing with a lot of people passing over to the other side. But also interestingly that pure and blood are in the same line, right? Mm-hmm. And then last one, and he will flourish for a long time under such a flag. So he's referring to the first line, the king who's giving opposition will flourish for a long time under such a flag. So will bring prosperity and maybe a new confederation. Wow. So yeah.
Okay, so on the pure blood, let me just bring this up to you guys too. We've talked about this on the show all over the year, kind of jokingly about it. It was in the WebBot data stuff 2 years ago, but now we're seeing the language pop up on Vac Sperm. I've talked about this in the show last month. Maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they were looking for unvax dating, I guess, to put it mildly. And that exists now. There's already websites out there for people who are pure blood, as the quatrain suggests here, getting together. And I had something else referring to that. I forgot where it went. But yeah, we're starting to see there's also jobless jobs that has also been created here in Canada for some of those more technical jobs where, for example, the World Economic Forum leaders wanted unvaccinated pilots to fly them to Davos. So we're seeing that in the nomenclature. What do you make of that last slide, Jay? Let me bring it back up for you as well.
Well, there's this guy, Jacques Attila, and he was a Francois Mitterrand's advisor, and he wrote a book called A Brief History of the Future, I think around the time Obama got elected, around 2008. Very interesting book. I've read it. And in the book, he posits that the number one problem for humanity is stupid people. And that we have to find a way to get rid of the stupid people. He's a pretty blunt guy. All right. And he doesn't really suggest, although at one point he sort of intimates that could be used to accomplish this task. And if you think about the long-term thing that's going to happen here, the only people that are going to be left are going to be the ones who have perception, the ones who have innate intelligence about what's going on around them, who are hyper aware, and the ones that aren't that, well, they're disappearing. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the world is headed, whether this is by accident or design or just human beings being stupid. This is what's going to happen. We are actually moving in to a place where the only people that will be here will be the hyper aware, highly perceptive people, and the rest will be gone.
It appears that's correct. The universe here is favoring organic humans, because if you look at who swallowed the Kool-Aid and swallowed the products, they were the staunch defenders of the critical race theory and the transgender stuff and the wokeism, all that stuff. And those are the people who are set to disappear, or at least be severely diminished in capacity. And on top of that, we have studies looking at the stillborn rates right now, which are horrible, and the hypothesis that perhaps the children that are born under two parents who were willing to take the products might no longer be fertile. So as Jay's explaining here, it's going to completely shift the population here on the planet, maybe as soon as in one generation here. Things are
very
happening.
much so. That's why I brought up the Aquarians being born. Yeah. They can find themselves at 15 being the leaders of the country because there's not anybody around.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Jay, you're killing me, man. That's a hell of a one. Okay, Julie, let's get to. Did you want to go back and redirect on the 521, Julie?
Well, 52? I just wanted to add that I think Nostradamus was kind of hinting at us that there's this wheel of fortune type of energy, like the wheel is turning. So the people that were at the bottom of the wheel and thought their rights were, they were ostracized and their rights were taken away from them, now will be the new leaders. So it's kind of a drastic change in the wheel of fortune.
In French, we say les derniers seront les premiers et les premiers seront les derniers. Basically, if you're last, you'll become first. If you're first, you'll become last. Or in religious terms, the meek shall inherit the earth. So it looks like we're there now. Yeah. And there's that saying of the separating the wheat from the chaff. Like we can do a whole show on that. Okay, Julie, let's get into 541 here also.
Okay. I think your guys are going to be blown away by this one. So first line, born beneath the shadows on a dark day. So in the decode, Dolores Cannon says that it means it's a leader born during an eclipse, because on a dark day, it means that either the sun is being eclipsed or the moon is being eclipsed. Wow. So, and then, you'll see who I found was born during an eclipse. Second line, he will be sovereign in ruling and in goodness. So to me, it means that kind of uncorrupted by power and by people trying to buy this leader out, staying true to his core values, because they're talking about first word is ruling and second one is goodness. So not being corrupted by power, as Machiavelli would have put it. Third line, he will cause his blood, again, this blood theme, he will cause his blood to revive the ancient urn. So when he talks about the ancient urn, he means Aquarius very often in his quatrains. So I think he's really much talking to about pure blood in this line, and them using the age of Aquarius to have this revival of technology, of society. So reviving the age of Aquarius that also deals with Atlantis. So this is big. And last line, renewing the century of gold for one of brass. So I'm not sure about this one. I'll let you, Jay, try to give me your 2 cents about this one, or JC also. I think he might be talking about alchemy. I don't know much about it, but for sure in the decode, he's talking about this rebuilding process. So I kind of did a little research on brass, and brass is used for a lot of musical instruments, including horns, bells, trumpets. And so in the decode, they were saying that they're going to use this value, so gold, and turn it into brass, which is more of a working kind of metal. So rebuilding the whole world with the right values. So, and also using the knowledge of Atlantis to build this new era. So let's just switch to the birth chart, JC, if you want. Yes. So I found this one, this leader who was born on a total lunar eclipse. So you can see at the bottom of his chart, there's the moon and the south node at 20 degrees and 21 degrees. So it's pretty much a total lunar eclipse. So whenever the moon and the sun are really close to the nodes, it's an eclipse. So, and also 4th house and 10th house, it means like he's going to have a very public position in changing the karma of the world, because the nodes are very, very much karmic. And Uranus sitting right next to his north node in his 10th house, the revolution, the rebel, also the planet of Aquarius. So yeah, I was kind of mind blown when I found that this week.
Wow, that's fascinating. Jay, let's just go back to this thing about gold and brass. Does that ring any bell to you? Do you want to add to that? I have an idea, but I want to hear you first.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the technologies that is going to become obvious that we need is going to be they can use sound to disintegrate things. They can use sound to make things go back together. We know about, of course, the cymatics and how you can use sound to rearrange matter. So, you change the frequency, the pattern changes. So we're also learning that that we can heal ourselves with sound. Certain chants and mantras are designed to vibrate through the body and cause a resonant frequency to change. And
That's
so
what
that
all the cathedrals were all about.
That is alchemy, and of course that's what gold is signifying. So I think we're moving into an age where sound and sound healing are going to become extremely important, especially in a time when we're probably not going to be able to afford doctors anymore. Right. And at the rate they're going, we're not even going to be able to drive to the hospital because they're going to disallow cars. So,
and also nobody's going to trust doctors anymore is our big
I don't
with
trust
everything. Exactly.
Although I do want to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I actually had minor surgery in late November at a hospital near here. And I went in there and I fully expected to get a whirl of hurt for not getting it, right? And the doctor came and said, "So did you get it?" And I said, "No, I have no intention." Not one person brought it up again. So, yeah.
So they were there.
Is what I'm saying. There's something psychically on a collective level that's happening. The people who used to bitch and moan about us are not doing it anymore. The ones who were on the fence now know that we were right, and so they're not bringing it up anymore. And that would be the people in the medical field, right?
Right.
They would know more than anybody if it works or not. And so they know it doesn't work. And so I believe, the age of Aquarius has had the pedal hit to the metal here. And the other side is starting to fall away.
That's fascinating. I appreciate that. And I'm noticing that here too. Like we saw a couple of nurses the other day kind of pretending to wear their mask, and then wherever's gone, they're putting it out, and they're kind of like nonchalantly about it. And I heard a lot of people are traveling to the States here from Canada and nobody's asking, even though I think there's still a policy in place. So it seems to be in this weird la la land here of acquiescence or acknowledgement, even though we don't have the Claude Adams. Okay, we need more of those guys. Yes, we do, because the normies are listening to those guys still to wake up. What I wanted to bring, though, renewing the century of gold for one of brass. In my mind, Jay, this kind of alluded to this Gilded Age where everything had a fake veneer of gold. And
That's
here
it.
we're kind of going back to maybe more solid, like the brass tacks or the high brass people, the people that get things done. That's how I kind of saw this one. Does that make sense to you also?
Yeah, and we're gonna lose all that ornate stuff too as time goes on here. It's going to get harder and harder for those buildings and stuff to exist. So I think this is it's renewing the century of gold. So this is renewing the alchemical world again. Alchemy is going to make a big, huge comeback, just like astrology is making right now, and the meaning of alchemy is going to become known. That it's
Right.
alchemy is the process of creativity condensed. And it's in everything. And once we understand that, then we understand the etheric world around us and how we can control the etheric world, how we can use it to our advantage, and we can rebuild, which is my dream, is that we tear down our cities, all of them, and we rebuild them with sacred geometry, with electrical Tesla electricity, taken free from the atmosphere, and not made out of glass and steel. And we have a reinvigoration of the spiritual landscape, and that's where we'll find healing.
And imagine also if we can appropriate some of those buildings that are now sitting on very specific ley lines, but that are addressing and promoting a negative frequency. Imagine if we could shift that around also and use the secret geometries, as you're saying, it would be a brand new world. Julie, for this quatrain of 541, we also had the conversation with Dolores here in her decode. Do you want to go through that too to add the context?
Can you just come back to the gold brass line? I something just popped up in my mind. Gold in astrology refers to Leo, which is the opposite sign from Aquarius. So maybe he's talking about renewing, the Leo energy was kind of the royalty type of energy, so people in power, but then decentralizing this power to the opposing sign of Aquarius, which is everybody on the same level and working as hard as each other, not like a king over the realm, having his slaves. So that might also be one of the meanings.
And I thought brass also, from a Navy standpoint, it's used everywhere. So if we're going back to Aquarius, it would make sense that brass would be more prominent again, as opposed to the gold veneer of maybe the last 100 years. Okay, wow, that's fascinating. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, so that's a decode by Nostrdamus in Dolores Cannon's book. So he says this leader will be instrumental in rebuilding the world and helping the world recover from the great war that will take place with the Antichrist. And when we decoded this Antichrist character, we kind of agreed it would be more of an energy that a couple different people could use, so not necessarily just one human being. So I believe personally that it's already, the Antichrist era is already here as we speak. The one world government and all of that. So changing the century of gold for one of brass refers to the rebuilding process. The first line refers to the fact that this leader will be born during an eclipse. The ancient urn refers to a time in the ancient past when men and women were concerned with the pursuit of knowledge instead of pursuit of war. So very much, I believe, talking maybe about the Atlantean time, which was all about, I believe, knowledge and true science. I don't know what you guys think about this.
Jay?
Dolores's interpretation is pretty cool. In the old days, they would, the alchemist and his Sora Mystica, which was his mystical sister, or the woman that he was doing the alchemy with, they would hang sheep fleeces all up in the trees in the evening. And then in the morning, all the dew would come in and fill up the fleece with dew, and then they would wring out the dew into an urn, and they make sure that the dew never touched the ground because it would short out. And so what you're doing is you're collecting the ether. The dew is the ether being collected onto this is what Jason and the Argonaut and the Golden Fleece is. And then they would wring out this etheric laden fluid, the dew, inside the fleece, and it would hit the urn and fill the urn up, and then they would use that for cooking and drinking and everything. And in the old days, they swore that you could live to be 140, 150 if you did this every day. So I think that might be what they're talking about. And as we get into the age of Aquarius, these practices are going to be revived. These kinds of
something that would allow us to live longer and be healthy, more healthy than we are naturally, I guess, in syncing with the universe, the stars, the sun, and everything.
Do you think, Jay, that also ushers in, and I'm not sure how, I'm just thinking this out loud, an era of time where humans expand the years that they live on the planet? We have records of perhaps humans living 800 years old to 1,000 years old, or 1,200. Now we're back down to 60 to 80. Do you see that changing anytime soon? Like, there's the technology you just talked about, but is there something more in terms of this alignment with chi, with prana, or kundalini? How does that all tie in here to Aquarius?
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed. We're going to, because of the internet and all this kind of stuff, we're going to realize what we have to do to concentrate the chi. That's what alchemy is, the concentration of prana or chi or the etheric energy or plasma, whatever you want to call it. And they concentrate it into the philosopher's stone, which is the high concentration of this stuff. You don't need doctors. You don't need hospitals. This stuff is free and it's everywhere. And these things are all going to become known, not because everybody is suddenly curious, but because necessity is the mother of invention. And so if I can show people how to cultivate mistletoe and then make a tincture out of it, and I can show you that will kill all cancers in your body, if you just take it every day, just a few drops, and a series of demonstrations like that occur, then we will be the winners at that point. People will begin to do these practices because there's really no choice. And if they really do go through with what they're saying, which means we're all going to be isolated in our places, aren't going to allow us to drive, and all these things, the 15-minute cities and all that, well, we're going to have to resort to doing it ourselves. And I think that is what the age of Aquarius is. The centralization of power and the return to ancient healthful practices.
Wow. And Aquarius is also the sign of energy healing. Very interesting. So, yeah, you were talking earlier about the frequencies, the healing frequencies of, let's say, music, let's say sound healing. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
A big part of the challenge. Oh, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
I'm actually involved in a project where we're trying to bring all the modalities that we just talked about to a streaming service, not an existing streaming service, but a new streaming service. And we're getting surprisingly a large amount of interest in this project. And again, it's not going to be UFOs or paranormal. It's going to be strictly resonant frequency healing.
Love it.
That's fascinating. I'm looking for a page here to show you guys while you're talking about that relates to that. You kind of caught me off guard. So I'll go back to the last slide, Julie, you gave me here, because one of the challenges, I think, for a lot of humans here as we transition into the stage of Aquarius, but with this Pluto introduction and all the changes that's going to bring around us, is the fact that we are no longer, at least for a period of time, we won't be able to sustain ourselves on systems and resources and mechanisms of governance that we were used to. So we're going to have this weird period of time where we have to rebuild all of that. Can you, Julie, maybe take a minute or two here to go through Pluto and Aquarius and really what that spells out. Because if we are going to navigate these changes and these structures around us, dismantling and crumbling around us, we have to kind of see where we're going so that we can walk around all of those pitfalls or those pit holes as we go. So explain that to the audience.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, it's important to say, I believe, that Pluto right now is in the very last degrees of Capricorn. And Capricorn in astrology rules big corporations, governments. So all the structures that are top-down structures. So like a minority of people ruling the majority of people, basically. So Pluto, when it leaves Capricorn, so it's right now, as we speak, it's leaving Capricorn. In March, we'll enter the other sign of Aquarius. So Pluto leaving Capricorn talks about the destruction of top-down structures, including governments, big corporations, using the old pyramidal model. So let's say a big corporation would have shifted its mindset into more of an Aquarian structure. I believe it could survive. Let's just give that as an example. But if you're still using the old system as your main scheme, then it's not going to work for especially when Pluto enters Aquarius, which is a fair distribution of resources, a fair distribution of knowledge, and a complete change in how power is distributed, which is Pluto power. So Pluto changing sign almost always ushers a crisis in society, because the foundation that we were used to before is no longer. So we have to build a new one, and we have to first deal with the destruction that Pluto does when it goes through the last degrees of one archetype. So first, there's kind of a destruction. And I believe it's also talking about the first quatrain when he said the democracy would be on hold for a while, so froze up. So third point, Pluto entering Aquarius will highlight society issues. So first of all, Pluto, what it does when it enters a sign, it brings up all corruption that's linked to the archetype we're talking about. So in this case, Aquarius. So Aquarius deals with new technology, AI. So technology further use for control of populations. So all those corruption, secrets, issues will be brought up to the surface with Pluto entering Aquarius. So first, AI, technology to further control population, internet, social media, freedom of speech, cryptos. So all the cryptos that are linked to corruption, CBDCs as well. Science and DNA manipulations. So all of that, I believe, will be brought up to the surface, because this is what Pluto does when it enters a new archetype.
You mean like controlled evolution at Pfizer? But keep going. Yes.
Yeah, exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can first go in, let's say, a direction that we would not like, because it emphasizes even more the agenda of Aquarius, which is transhumanism, which is control through science, control through DNA manipulations. So I believe many attempts to further control populations will be made, and then it will be up to the people to reject them, because it's in their face, they cannot deny it anymore, to move on to a more sovereign expression of the Aquarian and Plutonian archetypes, which both of them speak about big revolution, rebelling against authorities and becoming your own authority.
Mm-hmm.
So also, last point, in mundane astrology, Aquarius deals with all of the people, so common people, and Pluto is the death planet, so death and rebirth. So this is a transit where we could see what Cliff, I believe, called the big die-off. So, and for sure, this is going to lead to a complete metamorphosis of society, because we don't have the same human beings around, and we have to totally rebuild everything.
Yeah. Looking at that, Jay, what would you say to the audience members here in terms of getting their mind straight that there's all these changes? There's going to be a lot of systems that are no longer there to support you, and we have to make a way. In one hand, it looks scary as hell, but at the same time, it's the biggest opportunity we've had on this planet for perhaps thousands of years to really take control again of our sovereignty and of our own evolution. What would you say? How do you pull all of that in together?
Well, it's very fascinating. Everything, all those quatrains are incredibly fascinating. Yeah, we're moving to this place where every system has to be redone and rebuilt, and and it's going to be rebuilt by people who don't understand systems because we're all dying off. So it's going to be built by younger people who are going to have to do this all by themselves because we didn't leave them instructions on how to do this. And frankly, I don't know if we know how to do it. But either way, we're going to do it, and it's going to be a much better world. You know, I'm like super optimistic about the age of Aquarius, and I see the disillusion falling apart everywhere now, and the arguments are disappearing too. There's nobody like, you know, used to be like fighting and all that. And I don't see that anymore. So I think we're headed towards a very vastly different world of which, you know, we don't even ask the right questions. Like, why do our congressmen have to go to Washington, D.C.? Why can't they just meet on Zoom, right? Just instead of going to D.C., just stay in your house and meet Congress on Zoom. Why do we have to do all this? We're not asking ourselves the right questions on how we can solve problems in a much easier way. And if you just start looking at it, you'll see that once you kind of go local and you have a community build up, life actually gets more fun and it gets better and the old tensions die off. And that's what's going on. And we got to learn to have fun again.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I brought up this video the other day in an interview. Let me see if I can bring it up for you guys here. This is Doreen Dautin. She does a lot of decodes about religion, astrology. She suffers no fool. So just so you know, she has a very unique style. But in this last video, I sent quite a few people her way. Oh, no, not that one. It's the day before that, I think. Do the WEF creep you out? And what she was explaining there, she was looking at the reporters and the people reporting about, you know, all the shenanigans that were happening at Davos. And she said something that struck me. She says, you know, for every 1,000 people who strike at the branches, only one strike at the root of the problem. And she says, everything we do to expose corruption and go back towards a peaceful nature on the planet is useful, but it's not necessarily effective, what her point was. She said, we really need to go back and strike at the root. And of course, the root is you. So if you fix you yourself and you endeavor on that path, then everything outside will start reflecting the fact that you are fixed. Jay, explain to the audience members what Doreen Dautin is talking about here in your own words and in your own Taoist point of view.
Well, I mean, if you attack let's just call them the super mob. I don't know what else to call them. If you attack the super mob, you're going to get killed. All right. So chopping off the branches and thinking that's going to reduce their effectiveness is not going to work. What you have to do is ask, who are these people? And then how can we get rid of them? And in a peaceful way. And I think that's where we're headed. I think that the Great Distortion is starting to clear up. The clouds are going away. The sunshine's coming in, not much, but a little bit. And as the distortion clears up, we're going to ask the vital question is, who the hell is giving these orders and why? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to find out. I think we're on the very edge of finding that out right now. And I think they know that. And the more that we get closer to that answer, the more they distort reality. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to have a massive distortion of reality. And I think March sounds about right.
Yeah. And talking about this distortion, as of end of February, it's going to be Pisces season. So we're going to have a lot of this Piscean spell, as Meg calls it. So a lot of illusion being broadcast it, I believe, before we hit March, which is Pluto entering Aquarius.
Yeah.
The big reveal.
Julie, for people who want a little bit more information on that and how it's going to affect them specifically with their own zodiac sign, we just put out the February 2023 forecast here, the Astro Woo. Explain to the audience members how they can navigate through this and perhaps use this to navigate all of these changes that are happening in our world.
Yeah, so we go through the energies, the collective energies with astrology and tarot for the month of February. So this month seems to be very much focused about how you deal with your relationships. And we go through all zodiac signs in specific videos like that. So you can really use this knowledge and navigate the month as best as you can, because every archetype has a, let's say, a lower manifestation and a higher manifestation. So we guide you and hope that you can be guided towards the more, let's say, higher frequency manifestation.
Right. And on top of all of that, meditating is probably an important thing here. And I know it doesn't come natural to a lot of you. Julie has put up this brand new product here on maisonjupiter.com. Explain what we're looking at here, Julie, and how powerful it is when we come together to meditate in a single cause.
Yeah, so we're trying to use this Aquarian archetype and bring as much people together as we can to meditate together for more, let's say, personal sovereignty, abundance, and also healing. So we're bringing that to ourselves, but also to the collective. And we're hoping that those full moon monthly singing bowl meditations will greatly help this moving forward.
Okay, very good. And you've changed the product here for a sliding scale donation. Explain that to the audience, how that works, the exchange of energy, and why you chose to do it this way.
So yeah, we're trying that, the sliding scale principle. So we believe that in order to receive any kind of value or healing, in this case, there must be an energy exchange in some form. So that's why we put the sliding scale donation. So it's between 22 and 222. We want to make sure this meditation is as accessible as possible. So
very good.
Yeah.
And so for people who might have difficulty financially, they can email you, can work something out also, Julie?
Yeah, it's all in the description here. There's the email if you want to join, but you're experiencing some financial difficulty, there's the email, and we want to make sure that everybody can join.
Okay, there's quite a few people who registered already from last night's show on our pay-per-view. We might have to throttle back the number of seats just because of the server overload guide. So if you want to take part in this, please check it out now. The link is in the description box below and also in the live chat. Well, thank you, Julie, and thank you for all the research here for today's show. Jay, before we go, what's coming up on a reality check here on YouTube? I noticed that you have the Secrets of the Shining there too. I thought that was pretty cool. What else is coming up here for the audience members?
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I am going to bring these things to the front and try to explain them as best I can so that people can start practicing healthful practices at home in the trying times that we're about to face. And this is an era of a gigantic awakening, and just follow me on Reality Check on YouTube, and I will be bringing you more and more interesting stuff. Almost done with my book, by the way. I'll Monument to the End of Time. I've got like 3 chapters left, and I'll be done with that soon.
Oh, wow.
And hopefully we can marshal your energies to perhaps do some little snippets here on Beyond Alchemy and eventually get you on the Academy as well. I know a lot of people would be absolutely interested in that. Jay, perhaps a new project for us here in 2023. And I know Julie was working on this. Jay, I'm still looking for the poster, Julie. But the idea of the show we wanted to do with Graham Hancock, do you by any chance have the poster already available for you? Actually, I have one version of it. Not the right one, but it's our draft version, Jay. So we're trying to manifest this into reality, of course, and to get you and Graham on together for our next show here. I'll send you an email with the outline of the research that both Julie and I have put together here to try to make this a fascinating show with the audience members. We noticed that he's done quite a few interviews on YouTube as of late, so hopefully...
I messed up your name, Jay. Sorry. I'll correct it.
That was your earlier draft.
Yeah.
Poor Graham's taking so much crap. It's unbelievable. I mean, really? Aren't we supposed to be an open-minded people? I feel sorry for him.
This is a nonsense to me. And I don't know who it was the words of, but someone said if you're getting that much I can't
Flacker over
remember.
the target.
Yeah, it means you're doing something right. So he's right on target for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely would love to do my part, and Julie would love to do her part here, and trying to bring that information to a wider audience. And so, yes, if we can get Graham on here, we won't give him a hard time. Actually, we want to know more about this, and we want to go back to understanding how our ancient humans and our ancestors saw our cosmos and our place in it. I think that's part and parcel our responsibility here as we get into the age of Aquarius. So anyways, hopefully we can manifest that here in a short order. I love you guys. Thank you so much, Jay. And of course, guys, you can go and check out Jay and his work here at jweidner.com. And you can find him here also on YouTube at Reality Check. And you can find Julie at maisonjupiter.com. And also here on YouTube, where Julie, you're coming up with this new Astro Decode here with Meg. Explain that here very quickly before we go. What's this one going to be?
So every 2 weeks, we're coming up with a new Astro Decode. So next one is going to be next week. We're talking about compatible relationship in astrology because it's going to be the month of Valentine's Day. So, and we're trying to look at it from a very different point of view with real astrology, not just sun sign astrology.
Okay, well, stay tuned for that, folks. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This was, of course, the latest edition of Nostrdamus and the Vortex of Time with Mr. Jay Weidner and Julie from Maison Jupiter. I'm Jean Claude, BeyondMystic. I love you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.